Yo, what's up, world? Welcome back to the channel. APW Sports signing in. Philip Rivers' name has been in a lot of different discussions ever since he announced his retirement from the NFL after this 2020 season. The main thing that has been in discussion throughout a lot of fans and throughout a lot of media members is that if Philip Rivers is a Hall of Famer or not. But before I get into my thoughts on that exact subject, I just want to make sure that you guys are staying safe. It's a lot going on out here. I just want to make sure you guys are out there staying safe. Leave a like on this video so we can help beat the YouTube algorithm. And if you love football and you enjoy different football content, this is the place to be. So click that subscribe button and also click that notification bell so you will not miss a single video that I post. But let's dive into this topic. Without further ado, let's dive into it.
I'm striving to get rich. That's why I almost went 2 years without buying shoes and fits. Things change now. My mom hearing me with my music and she look a little proud.
Before I give you guys my full thoughts on whether Philip Rivers is a Hall of Famer or not, I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of background into Philip Rivers' career. Philip Rivers was drafted number 4 overall in the 2004 NFL Draft, coming out of NC State by the New York Giants. He was subsequently traded on draft day to the San Diego Chargers in exchange for Eli Manning. Throughout the course of his career, he spent 2004 to 2019 with the San Diego/Los Angeles Chargers, and he just spent his very last season in the NFL in 2020 with the Indianapolis Colts. Throughout the course of Philip Rivers' career, he became an 8-time Pro Bowler in 2006, 2009 through 2011, 2013, 2016, to 2018. He was the NFL Comeback Player of the Year in 2013. He led the league in completion percentage in 2013. He was the passing yards leader in 2010. He led the league in passing touchdowns in 2008 and was also the NFL passing rating leader that year. Philip Rivers has had a very, very long career. He's had a very, very productive career in the NFL that spans over 17 seasons. He was named the official starting quarterback of the San Diego Chargers in 2006 when Drew Brees left in free agency to sign with the New Orleans Saints after a devastating shoulder injury. And from there, Philip Rivers really took the ground running. To answer the question, is Philip Rivers a Hall of Famer? The answer to that question is a resounding yes. And I will give you guys some evidence that will back up the claim that Philip Rivers is a definite Hall of Famer for the career that he's had in the NFL. From 2006 to 2020, which Philip Rivers was a starting quarterback, he started 240 consecutive regular season games. And in those 240 consecutive starts, over 15 seasons, Philip Rivers threw for over 3,000 yards in each of those 15 seasons, including 12 different seasons where Philip Rivers threw for over 4,000 yards, including the last 8 seasons of Philip Rivers' career, which see him through for over 4,000 yards in his NFL career. That level of productivity alone should warrant you a spot in the Hall of Fame, especially being that consistent for that longer period in the NFL career. And in those years, Philip Rivers never threw for anything less than 20 touchdown passes. Now, granted, a lot of people are going to make the argument that Philip Rivers should not be a Hall of Famer due to his failure of going to a Super Bowl, let alone winning it, and his lack of playoff success in his NFL career. Now, granted, Philip Rivers has struggled in the playoffs. A Hall of Famer is a player that should not be judged based solely on what they're able to do in the playoffs. If that was the case, guys like Jim Kelly, guys like Dan Marino, guys like Barry Sanders would not be Hall of Famers because they didn't have much success in the playoffs. Philip Rivers did not have much success in the playoffs, but when you look at his numbers, he had a very productive and historic NFL career. Just looking at his career numbers, Philip Rivers threw for over 63,000 yards in his NFL career, over 400 touchdowns with 421 touchdowns. And his completion percentage was over 60% in his career, which stands at 64.9 career completion percentage. So he was accurate. He threw for a lot of yards. He won a lot of games, with his career record being 134 and 106 in his career. Now, granted, he did have a lot of interceptions with 209, but one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Brett Favre has the career record for interceptions because he was a gunslinger. And I feel the same way with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was a gunslinger. He was a guy that was going to throw into a tight window. He was going to throw into tight coverage. Whether it was open or not, he was going to take that chance and believe in his arm and believe that he can fit the football in between the tight window, i.e. a guy like Brett Favre. One guy that stands out that you can compare numbers to in his career to is a guy like Troy Aikman, who is a Hall of Famer. When you look at Troy Aikman's numbers, he did not have a season in his career for where he threw for over 3,500 yards, let alone 4,000 yards, which Phillip Rivers did on 12 separate occasions. When you also look at Troy Aikman's numbers, he only threw for 32,000 yards in his career, only 165 touchdowns in his career, and has a lower completion percentage than Phillip Rivers with 61.5. So if you take a look at those numbers and you compare them to Phillip Rivers' numbers, Phillip Rivers' numbers outweigh Troy Aikman's numbers by a ton. And if you look at Troy Aikman's numbers, if he's not the quarterback of a 3-time Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys team in the early 90s, is Troy Aikman considered a Hall of Famer with the numbers that he was able to put up in his career? Probably not. And Phillip Rivers had a longer career. Phillip Rivers threw for over more yards in his career. Phillip Rivers threw for more touchdowns. Granted, Troy Aikman was on a better team, but when you look at the individual production, Phillip Rivers' individual production outshadows Troy Aikman's production by a long shot. And if you want to make that argument for playoff success, being a judge of a Hall of Fame quarterback, you can look at one guy, Warren Moon, who did not, one, appear in a Super Bowl, and did not, two, win a Super Bowl alone. And when you look at Warren Moon's numbers, he threw for over 4,900 yards in his career, has less touchdowns, and he threw for a less completion percentage than Phillip Rivers, with his completion percentage being at a 58.4. When you compared Phillip Rivers' numbers to guys like Troy Aikman and to guys like Warren Moon, his numbers are going to outweigh those guys by a lot. And granted, Warren Moon was in a high pass efficiency offense during the majority of his career with the run and shoot that was made real famous in the 80s and the early 90s by the Houston Oilers. So he was throwing the football at a high clip as well. He was throwing the football for a lot of yards as well, as being that Warren Moon has 4 different seasons in his career where he threw for over 4,000 yards, and he threw for over 4,600 yards on 2 different occasions in 1990 and in 1991. But if you want to compare Phillip Rivers to another guy that is also a Hall of Famer, you can look at one that played for that very franchise that Phillip Rivers played for the first 16 years of his career. You can look at one Dan Fouts, a player who, in course, is a Hall of Famer. But when you compare Phillip Rivers' numbers to his, Dan Fouts only threw for 4,300 yards and only 254 touchdowns in that Dan Coryell high pass efficiency offense that the Chargers brought to the league in the 70s and 80s. He also has a couple of 4,000-yard seasons in there, with 4,715 being his career high that he set in 1980. So I think Phillip Rivers has had a better career than Dan Fouts. I feel that Phillip Rivers has had a better career than Warren Moon. And outside of the Super Bowls, he's had a better career than Troy Aikman. And all 3 of those guys are, you guessed it, Hall of Famers. I'm not really going to go too much into playoff success because I feel personally that is going to be a team thing. You have to have teams to win playoffs. Now, granted, Phillip Rivers has had some really good teams with LT, Antonio Gates, and Vincent Jackson throughout the course of his career. He did not play that well in the playoffs, but there are other quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that does not have Super Bowl championships as well. Guys like Jim Kelly, guys like Dan Marino, guys like the two guys I aforementioned, and Dan Fouts, and also Warren Moon. And when you look at Phillip Rivers' numbers, there are guys in the Hall of Fame with a lot less numbers. He threw for over 4,000 yards on 12 separate occasions, including the last 8 seasons of his NFL career. He was able to sustain that level of productivity throughout the course of 15 seasons in the NFL at the quarterback position. He was productive. He was a guy that you game plan for, but he was still able to be productive in the NFL. In judging a Hall of Famer is a guy that you're going to game plan for, a guy that you're going to come into the game as he's the guy that you have to slow down and he's the guy that you have to stop. And when you look at Phillip Rivers' career, he was still able to put up those numbers despite being heavily focused on, despite teams having a game plan to stop him. He was still able to beat defenses. He was still able to carve defenses apart, throw the ball for touchdowns, throw the ball around the yard, and have a high completion percentage in his NFL career. The playoff success is not there. It's not there with a lot of different guys that are in the Hall of Fame right now. So if your argument is that Phillip Rivers did not win the Super Bowl, so he should not be a Hall of Famer, I think that argument goes out of the window, because when you look at Super Bowls, that has the success of a team. You cannot really tie Super Bowls, you cannot really tie winning, necessarily all winning, into one player in their career. If you was to say that, Dan Marino being one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever live, being one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game of football, would have a Super Bowl championship based on his level of play. So the Super Bowl argument goes out of the window when you're talking about longevity, when you're talking about productivity consistently, when you talk about things that lead to an NFL player having success throughout the course of their career. The Super Bowl championship argument is one that I think is invalid, especially for a guy like Rivers who sustained that level of productivity for 15 NFL seasons. Because if you made that same argument for any other Hall of Famer, a guy like Barry Sanders, who is one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game of football, a guy like Randy Moss, a guy like Terrell Owens, who are two of the top greatest receivers to ever play the game of football, should not be Hall of Famers on the sole fact that they do not have a Super Bowl championship. So when you look at the evidence of Phillip Rivers' career and you compare them to other Hall of Famers, his numbers are greater. When you compare Phillip Rivers to guys that played in this era, he was a top guy in the era that Phillip Rivers was a starting quarterback in the NFL. You cannot name but only very few guys in the league that were better. Probably a guy like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. You could argue Drew Brees in that category. But when you talk about top quarterbacks throughout the course of the late 2000s and the early 2010s, Phillip Rivers is a guy that you would mention as being one of those top quarterbacks that played in the NFL during his era. So his career is 100% a Hall of Fame career. But that is all I have for you guys today. Be sure to leave a like on this video, and also comment your thoughts down below or whether you agree or disagree with Phillip Rivers being a Hall of Famer. And if you have gotten to this point of the video and you are not subscribed, go ahead right now and click that subscribe button, and also click that notification bell so you will not miss a single video. But I am APW Sports signing out. Make sure you guys stay safe. Have a great and excellent day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.